Okay, we are in Dreamweaver, and one of the things I want to show is a couple of different ways of doing a simple page. We'll start with something like this, and let's look at the split design of that. So, kind of a basic structure. I want to show a little bit about how you can do classes and build with a header and that kind of thing. I want to show some backgrounds. Let's split this one. So I've got a background here and some images, and I want to talk about using classes to determine whether those images go to the right or the left and floating them into the flow of the page. Also want to talk about what if we want to take the content and split it into two columns, and that's what I'm doing here, but we might want these columns to be in different places. Also how to put menus together. And I don't think we need to see that one. And what we can do to make the two columns be left and right. Let me split that. In fact, let's go to Design View, and these are left and right, but the problem is, let's preview this page in Firefox. Problem is, when we float things, floats tend to collapse. So I want to talk about how we can keep floats from collapsing. You can see this looks a little funny. That's because that's collapsed. And last but not least, what we can do, and I'll just go ahead and preview this one, to create dynamic highlighting in our menus. So if we want whatever the current page is to be lit up with a different color than it is on these pages, how do we do that? Okay, so those are the things I want to cover, and it'll probably take maybe 3 or 4 tutorials of about 10-15 minutes each. So let's just jump in there and let me see how fast I can go without being confusing. So we'll get these out of the way, and let's just start with a new page. I'm going to do File, New, and I'll go to HTML, and I'm going to set it to HTML5. And we'll hit, there's HTML5, and I'll hit Create. And I'm going to go to just pure code for a minute, and I also want to do a File, New, and just pick XHTML 1.0 transitional so you can see the difference. And let's create that. And now let's just slide this down, and you can see two different doc types. Very simple with HTML5, that's all you have that's above the title of the page, versus XHTML 1.0 transitional, all this above. So if you wanted to change one to the other, you just Control-C, copy, and paste. And that's basically all you need to do to move a simple page from XHTML 1.0 to HTML5. So let's take this one and just do a little work on it. This one, the first thing I should say is that this is the doc type. This is the HTML, and we close the HTML with a slash closing tag. Then the head of the document's next, and we close that head with a slash also. So every beginning tag needs a closing tag. Inside there we do have a character set definition, and we have a title. Okay, and you normally put in some title here. And then we have our body, and the body closes. So what I'm going to do is put some stuff into this body, and then we're going to pretty quickly get into CSS and adjusting how this looks. So I'm going to start off with an H1 tag and say this is an H1 heading. Okay, so that's done. And let's do a paragraph tag and say this is a paragraph. And we'll close that with a slash. And let's do an H2 just so we can discuss the difference. H2, this is an H2 tag heading, and close that. And let's split the view so we can see what that looks like. And you can see that just pure tags H1, P, and H2 are smart enough to know what size to make themselves. Okay, and that would be the case in the browser also. The browsers are smart enough to know how big to make these, but with CSS we can be a little bit more defined. But we're not quite ready for CSS yet, I don't think. I want to do a little bit with the structure of this page because, yeah, if you wanted a really super simple page, you could do it with no structure at all. But what I want to do is have some boxes. And let me show you one. Here's one. This is a little bit more advanced because in the body, our first big box is a wrapper. That's our big box that holds everything, all these little boxes like the header box, the main content box, and the let's go down to the end of main content. We close the main content div, we get the footer, there's the footer, and we close the footer right there. Open the footer, close the footer, and then we have the wrapper. We close the wrapper that started way up here, and then at the end of the wrapper we close our body and we close our HTML. So going back to our simpler example, what we could do is say that let's just put this in a main content div. Let's start off real simple. So I'm going to say div ID equals main content. Now when I say div, I mean like division. So we're putting a division into the page. And I'm going to slash to close that. So we're closing the main content, and there's the opening of the main content. So all this stuff is in a box right now. Well, now let's go ahead and get our feet wet with a little bit of CSS. So under the title, I'm going to hit return and do a very simple style tag, and we'll make that a little bit more legitimate a little bit later, but let's try to keep it simple for now. And this style tag is going to have in it, it's got an opening and a closing style tag first of all. And I want this to have some information about this main content div, like what color it is, that kind of thing. In fact, let me just click over here, and you can see as soon as I click over here, there's a little box around all this content. That's our main content div. It knows that it's a div, it just doesn't have any particular attributes yet. So let's give it some attributes. What I'm going to do is say hash symbol main content, and I'll do a couple of curly brackets, and I'll say background color red. Let's just keep it really simple. And when I click over here, that's red. Now let's do something else. Let's add another div ID. Div ID equals footer, and let's put in a little bit of content in here and a paragraph tag, and say copyright 3D 2013 3D cognition, and we'll close that tag, and we'll close the footer, and we'll do a save. And while we're saving this, let's okay, I'm going to save this as SS2, simple page 2, and we're going to say super simple 2, and we're going to say save. Okay. Now you notice that copyright's got a little box around it too, because it's a div. And let's go in and just add some specifics for that. So I'll copy the main content div, but I'll call it footer, and we'll say the background color on that one is light green. And we'll click over here, and you can see that that works. So, you know, I'll use these somewhat ugly colors as I'm determining what divs are going to go where, and then when I've got everything structured the way I want, then I'll go ahead and add proper colors. So what we need now is a big box to hold these little boxes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is create a new div. Div ID equals, I'm going to call it wrapper. It's like a gift wrap when you wrap a gift, but this wrapper is going to go all the way around these other two boxes. So wrapper, and I'll put in a little space here to remind me that it closes way down here. And I'll even put in a comment here, and this is a HTML comment. It's a less than symbol, exclamation point, close wrapper, and dash dash greater than symbol. So now there's a wrapper over here, and you can kind of see the edges of that wrapper, these little dashed lines. So these two boxes are in a bigger box, but it's still a little bit hard to see that. So let's make it easier, because that way you can conceive of what's going on here a little bit better. So I'm going to say that I want some CSS for the wrapper, and I hope you can see the relationship here. A div ID in your HTML, which is your real content in the body of the page, translates into a hash symbol with the same name. Notice it's still called wrapper, but instead of div ID, it's a hash symbol. Same thing with the main content. It's still called main content, but instead of div ID, it's just a hash symbol. So that's how the CSS looks for each of these divs. So for the wrapper, we're going to do a left curly bracket, right curly bracket, and let's go ahead and give it a background color too. Let me just copy this and save a little time. Background color, let's say light blue. And there it is. But you know, if these things are in that, why can't we see the edges of this bigger box? That's because we haven't set up any margins yet. So let's do a little bit of that. What I'm going to do is just organize this a little bit better. So I'm going to hit some space returns here, and we'll call this, well, actually for the wrapper I think I want a width. Width of, let's say, 900 pixels, and that'll do it for now. And here I want a background color, and I want a width of 600 pixels. And this one, footer, I want a width of the same as this one, 900 pixels. And we'll save it and look at it, and now you can see, let's go to a pure design view. You can see this is only 600 pixels, the wrapper is the big one with the light blue, and then the footer is taking up the bottom space of the page. It's the same size as the wrapper, but it's still kind of really hard to see the size of the wrapper, isn't it? So let's make that easier for you guys to see. What I'm going to do for that is I'm going to set margin for the main content to be, let's say, 20 pixels, and save and go to design view. And now you can see with a little bit of margin around this red box, this main content box, you can see that it's really just floating inside of the wrapper. Okay, that gives you an idea how to structure a page. Let's look at a page that's a little bit more, a little further along. I think actually this is probably a good place to break and go into our next video. So in the next video we'll talk about how to do a real complete structure, and then how to bring images into that and float those images left and right.